South Africa Investment Conference, where we secured pledges for investments in excess of 890 billion in industries across the economy. Significantly, a substantial portion of investments commitments were made by South African domestic investors. When local investors show confidence in the prospects of the economy of our country, international investors follow suit. Economic growth is not an end in itself, Madam Speaker. Its purpose is to create work, is to restore hope, and also to expand opportunity. Every investment secured, every infrastructure built and completed, and every reform implemented must ultimately improve the lives of ordinary South Africans. The Presidency is also working with the relevant department to protect jobs in the auto industry, in the cement, in steel, and other distressed sectors of our economy. We have embarked on the largest infrastructure build in South Africa's history. Over the next 3 years, the state, as we have said before, will be investing up to 1 trillion rand in building and refurbishing roads, dams, schools, hospitals, clinics, as well as energy, logistics, and transportation infrastructure. Our office is coordinating efforts to broaden markets for South African goods. We continue to strengthen our trade relations with our main trading partners, including a number of countries on our continent, the European Union, the United States, and China, while expanding the diversity and volume of our exports to other parts of the world. For close to 2 decades, load shedding was one of the single largest constraints to our country's economic growth and to social development. Through the National Energy Crisis Committee, and thanks to the efforts of Eskom, government departments, and social partners, the country has recorded more than a year without load shedding. That is something that should be applauded. Eskom has returned to financial and operational viability. New capacity continues to be added to the national grid, including from renewable energy sources. We are now working to bring load reduction that is experienced by our communities in many municipalities to an end. Through the focused work of Transnet, supported by the National Logistics Crisis Committee, the performance of our railways and ports is improving. More tonnage is being transported and also being exported. This is helping to ease long-standing bottlenecks across key economic sectors like mining, agriculture, and manufacturing. We are also seeing progress in other economic sectors. For example, between January and March this year, agriculture recorded an 11% increase in export earnings compared to the same period last year. South Africa is now the largest exporter of citrus by volume in the whole world, and that is something that should be applauded. We are surpassing a number of countries that are known to be great exporters of citrus, such as Spain and a number of countries in Latin America. Access to productive land is essential to grow our agricultural output to create jobs, and lift people out of poverty. Over time, government has acquired around 2.5 million hectares of land under the proactive land acquisition strategy. This land has generally been leased to beneficiaries on a short-term basis, which limits their ability to borrow money and use the land as collateral. It limits their ability to invest in the land, to grow agricultural production, and to contribute to the rural economy. As part of our efforts to revitalize rural economies, to strengthen land rights, and to support the inclusion, particularly of Black farmers in commercial agriculture, we have embarked on a concerted effort and program to release this land with title deeds to deserving beneficiaries. Recently, I was in Northwest, where we were handing out land, and the quest of our people was largely that the land must now be handed over to them in title deeds rather than in leaseholds. And we are going to respond to this. The Minister of Land Reform and Rural Development will outline the details of the program to convert agricultural leases to title deeds. In other areas of the economy, such as tourism, there is significant growth. South Africa recorded 10.5 million international tourist arrivals last year, which is the highest number of visitors on record in our country. And in the first quarter of this year, tourist arrivals were up by more than 12% compared to the same period last year. These are some of the indicators of progress in pursuit of inclusive growth that creates jobs. They are the building blocks upon which investments are being secured and opportunities are being created for the people of our country. Even while there is clear progress, events from far from our shores are threatening to slow our emerging economic recovery. The attack by the United States and Israel on Iran and the conflict that has now engulfed much of the region has set off a global oil crisis. The effects of the surge in oil prices and other critical supplies like fertilizer are likely to undermine much of the progress that we had made in bringing down inflation and the cost of living. Together with disruptions to the global economy, these developments are likely in the immediate term to slow down our economic growth and to hamper our efforts to create jobs. We should anticipate that conditions will be difficult for the next while for our economy. Now, these developments are unfolding as the latest employment figures from Stats SA show a decline in employment in the last quarter. We know from experience that it often takes time for investment to translate into economic growth and for the growth to translate into jobs. But we must still be deeply concerned about the decline in employment because it is about people's lives and their livelihoods. These difficulties underline the urgency of the work that we are doing. We must move faster and with greater focus to implement our priority actions. Another of the priorities we identified in the State of the Nation address is to fight crime and corruption. We continue to rebuild and strengthen our law enforcement agencies, the security services, the National Prosecuting Authority, and specialized anti-corruption bodies. A critical area of focus is the South African Police Service. We look forward to receiving the final report of the Commission of Inquiry into Criminality, Political Interference, and Corruption in the Criminal Justice System, which is chaired by Judge Mbuyiseli Madlanga. The findings and recommendations of the Commission are expected to bolster our efforts to strengthen the South African Police Service. The work of the Commission is already having an impact. Following the submission of the Commission's first interim report in December of last year, the South African Police Service, working with the National Prosecuting Authority, set up a special task team to investigate referrals arising from the Commission. Now, this task team has begun its work in earnest and has already brought a number of cases to court, following a number of arrests that have been effected. We must be unequivocal. Public office is a public trust. Those who abuse public resources for private gain betray our Constitution. They undermine development and steal from the poor in our country. There will be no tolerance for corruption, regardless of position, status, or political affiliation. The Presidency continues to oversee and coordinate the implementation of the recommendations of the State Capture Commission. Of the 60 actions contained in our implementation plan, which we presented to Parliament, 80% are complete, substantially complete, or on track. The recoveries by law enforcement agencies linked to the work of the Commission now stand at over 17 billion rand of money that has been recovered from those who gained illegally. 10 new acts have been passed to close the gaps that State Capture Commission identified. These include acts to enable prosecution-led investigation of corruption, reform of public procurement system, the professionalization of public administration, and the overhaul of our intelligence services. Cabinet recently approved for public comment a draft bill to amend the Protected Disclosures Act. This bill aims to strengthen the protection of whistleblowers and is a vital pillar of our fight against corruption. The Presidency is at the forefront of mobilizing South Africans from all walks of life behind the national effort to end gender-based violence against women and girls. It exercises stewardship over the implementation of the National Strategic Plan to combat gender-based violence and femicide. In November last year, gender-based violence and femicide was classified as a national disaster, and Cabinet has approved action plans to tackle this crisis and commit the necessary resources. Prevention is our priority. We are therefore increasing our efforts to promote positive masculinity, focused on boys and young men in schools, in communities, and organizations. We continue to strengthen the response of the police, prosecutors, and courts, and continue to improve support for care of survivors of gender-based violence. Another important area is the economic empowerment of women through capacity building, improved access to public procurement, and greater involvement in the value chains of key industries in our economy. As we work to build a safer, more stable, and more prosperous society, we do need to address the challenge of migration. When it is well managed and regulated, migration can help to drive economic growth and opportunity for all. However, we need to deal with illegal migration. We have seen how illegal immigration into our country can put pressure on our public services and undermine our efforts to create decent work for all. As announced in the State of the Nation address, government is taking decisive action to address this challenge. We are cracking down on violations of immigration laws. We are increasing our inspections of workplaces and prosecuting employers who violate our labor laws. We are strengthening, Madam Speaker, we are strengthening border security, stamping out corruption in the immigration system, and closing the loopholes in fragmented immigration laws. We must be clear, however, every person in South Africa, whether they are citizens or foreign nationals, must respect our laws. They must also respect the rights of every person in our country, and our laws must be upheld. We must never give in to violence, to xenophobia, and to vigilantism. As a society, we must stand against all forms of disinformation, of incitement, of false information being spread around, of racism, and ethnic mobilization. We will continue to strengthen and enforce our laws while upholding the Constitution of the Republic and also respecting the human dignity of all. This will enable us to deal with illegal immigration without turning against one another. Another critical priority we outlined in the State of the Nation address is to urgently resolve the water crisis in our country that is affecting many parts of the Republic. Drawing on our experience in ending load shedding, we have established the National Water Crisis Committee. Coordinated from the center of government, the committee has begun the implementation of the National Water Action Plan to address the weaknesses in the management and delivery of water services. Through the plan, we are pursuing both immediate relief and lasting structural reforms. In the short term, national government will intervene directly in municipalities that are facing acute water failures using existing constitutional and legislative powers that we have. Over the medium term, as well as the long term, the delivery of water needs to be overhauled, and the model needs to be overhauled and modernized. Municipalities will be required to ring-fence water revenues so that what consumers pay for is reinvested directly into fixing pipes, reservoirs, and pumping stations, instead of having the revenues being utilized for other purposes other than to improve the delivery of water. We are also working to overhaul local government so that it works for the people of our country. This is vital if we are going to improve our people's lives. The true test of government is not what happens at the union buildings or in the Houses of Parliament. The true test is whether water flows from a tap, whether a street light works, whether refuse is collected, whether a road is maintained, and whether the community feels safe. That is the true test. That is why fixing local government is amongst the most urgent priorities of this administration. It is vital to growing our economy and creating jobs. If the conditions for investment in our towns and cities are unfavorable, if there is a lack of electricity or water or poorly maintained infrastructure, investors will simply take their business and their money elsewhere, as we have seen in some of our towns. That is why we continue to prioritize the revitalization of local government and to support efforts towards finalizing the revised white paper on local government. As we undertake the far-reaching reforms outlined in the white paper, the Presidency is using the working group model to support large metros. This model brings together the Presidency, provincial governments, municipalities, business, state-owned enterprises, organized labor, and representatives from community-based organizations to implement priority interventions to turn municipalities around. In 2024, we established the Presidential eThekwini Working Group, and in March of last year, the Presidential Johannesburg Working Group was also established. Across all the metros in the country, we have prioritized key reforms to ring-fence revenue in the trading services system that we have established. Now, these reforms will enable greater investment in water, in energy, and waste management infrastructure to meet the growing service delivery demands in our towns and cities. Another priority from the State of the Nation address is to tackle youth unemployment and overhaul skills development in our country. The Presidency is the coordinator of the Presidential Employment Stimulus and the Presidential Youth Employment Intervention. For the current financial year, we will be expanding the National Youth Service under the Presidential Youth Employment Intervention to 100,000 community youth employment opportunities. The Presidency also supports the Youth Employment Service initiative led by the private sector, which connects unemployed young people with work experience opportunities. The on-the-job training and skills development that beneficiaries receive through these programs improves their labor market prospects and prepares them for opportunities to become entrepreneurs. We are implementing the commitments that are made in the State of the Nation address to overhaul the skills system. We are working to transition our TVET colleges to offer occupational qualifications with embedded workplace experience, allowing more graduates to transition into employment upon the completion of their studies. We are also working to rationalize and reform the CETA system to strengthen industry ownership and reorient the levy grant incentive structure. Community education and training colleges are also being strengthened as pathways into livelihoods, micro-enterprise, and second chance education. We are focusing on outcomes-based funding by reforming our National Skills Fund and scaling up the Job Boost Outcomes Fund. Building a capable developmental state is both a state-of-the-nation priority and one of the 3 strategic priorities outlined in the medium-term development plan. A strong, capacitated, and professional presidency is the engine room of the capable, ethical, and increasingly digital developmental state that we are striving to build. We are undertaking a broad range of initiatives to strengthen accountability, to promote participatory democracy, and deepen intergovernmental coordination. We are also advancing participatory democracy through the various presidential imbizos that we hold through our provinces. Through the district development model, we are mobilizing all spheres of government and local stakeholders to coordinate planning, budgeting, and service delivery implementation in local government. The presidency has a central role in advancing South Africa's global and continental agenda. The President and the Deputy President continue to participate in outward investment missions, together with our ministers, as well as various business forums that always accompany us on these outward investment missions. This is part of deepening economic diplomacy efforts to attract investment in key sectors such as agriculture, critical minerals, and manufacturing value chains. A central part of this work is the advancement of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, which presents in many ways unprecedented opportunities for trade and investment, as well as industrialization for our economy across the continent. We continue to support key initiatives of South Africa's G20 presidency. These include the International Panel on Inequality, which is in the process of being formally established. This year, South Africa will be assuming the chairship of SADC and will focus on advancing stability, cooperation, and integration across our region. We will continue to be involved with diplomatic efforts in support of peace processes in areas such as Eastern DRC and South Sudan, as well as Sudan itself. We continue to use our membership of the G20, of BRICS, of the non-aligned movement, and other bodies to assert the primacy of international law and the centrality of the United Nations in global affairs. We remain convinced, Madam Speaker, that the right to sovereignty and self-determination should be extended to all people, including the people of Palestine, Western Sahara, and Cuba. The country will soon also be embarking on the next phase of the national dialogue as we strive to chart a new course for our country by getting our people to be involved in various dialogues that will be held across the country. These will include ward-based engagements, digital engagements, and sectoral dialogues. And I call on all South Africans to come together once more and be part of crafting a new vision for our country. Madam Speaker and honorable members, the State of the Nation address sets out the line of march for all of us. The budget process gives effect to government's plans and programs for the year ahead. Various departments have presented their budgets, and our ministers and deputy ministers have shown the work that they will be doing through their various budgets. We have sought to outline the role of the presidency in driving our national priorities. We have sought to demonstrate the value of this strategic coordination, the progress that has been made, and how we plan to build on that progress in the year ahead. The progress we have made to date is not a product of chance. It is the result of deliberate state action to drive structural reform agenda across government, working together with our social partners. The progress we are witnessing owes much to strategic direction from the presidency, as well as our various departments and the work of our ministers and deputy ministers and directors general. Even as our economy is recovering, there is much still to be done. Local government must be fixed with urgency, and the state of service delivery must be turned around. Corruption must be uprooted, crime must be stamped out, and government must serve the people and treat them with respect and dignity. And work must continue in earnest. And all of us should ourselves never be deterred by distractions or political intrigue. The National Executive, Parliament, and our courts are mandated to serve the people of South Africa and give effect to the promise of our Constitution. This must be our overriding priority. As I conclude, Madam Speaker, I want to express my gratitude to Deputy President Paul Mashatile, the Minister in the Presidency, Ms. Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, and the Deputy Ministers Nongeba, Mhlauli, and Kenny Murolong, who through the work that they continue to do in the presidency strengthen our resolve. I also express my gratitude to the Director General in the presidency, Ms. Baleni, and all the advisors and officials who make this important institution at the heart of government work. Madam Speaker, I therefore commend this budget vote of the presidency to the National Assembly, and I look forward to the debate that will ensue throughout the afternoon into the evening. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable President. Thank you, honorable members. I will now ask the Honorable Chief Whip of the largest party.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of South Africa, honorable members and fellow South Africans. On behalf of the African National Congress, I rise to express our unequivocal support for the adoption of the Budget Vote 1, the President's. We do so because this is not an ordinary budget vote. The Presidency is the center for strategic leadership in the democratic state. It is the institution through which the President, as a head of state and as a head of the national executive, exercises the constitutional responsibility to uphold, defend, and respect the Constitution, to promote the unity of the nation, to coordinate the work of the executive, and to ensure that the machinery of government is directed towards the realization for a better life for all. When we vote for this budget, therefore, we're not merely approving administrative expenditure. We are resourcing the center of government to coordinate delivery, enforce accountability, accelerate reform, rebuild state capacity, and give practical expression to the priorities of the medium-term development plan, inclusive growth and job creation, poverty reduction, a capable state, and a society founded on human dignity, equality, and non-racialism. We debate this vote in a year of historic importance. In 2026, South Africa marks 30 years since the signing of the democratic constitution. This is not a ceremonial milestone. It is a moment to reflect, renew, and recommit ourselves to the unfinished task of social and economic transformation. The Constitution was born out of bitter struggle. It emerged from the long night of colonial dispossession, land conquest, migrant labor, racist exclusion, past laws, burnings, massacres, detention without trial, and the brutal arrogance of a parliament that once believed it could turn injustice into law, simply because the white minority commanded the numbers in the House. That is why our democracy is not a crude parliamentary democracy, in which a majority may do as it pleases. Ours is a constitutional democracy. Parliament makes laws, but the Constitution is supreme. The executive governs, but only under the authority of the Constitution. The courts interpret and enforce the Constitution not as enemies of our democracy, but as guidance of the compact that the people of South Africa made with one another after generations of division and suffering. The preamble to the Constitution describes our supreme law as a bridge from a past of deep division, strife, conflict, untold suffering and injustice, towards a future founded on democratic values, social justice, and the fundamental human rights. That bridge was not built so that the poor may admire it from a distance. It was built so that the dispossessed, the unemployed, the landless, women, workers, young people, and rural communities may cross into the new society. It is therefore profoundly mistaken to present the Constitution as an obstacle to transformation. The Constitution is not a brake for transformation. It is the mandate for transformation. It authorizes restitution, redistribution, and the tenure reform. It protects workers. It requires the state to take reasonable measures to advance access to housing, healthcare, food, water, social security, and education. It permits and indeed demands measures to overcome the legacy of unfair discrimination. The failure to fully use the transformative instruments of the Constitution cannot be blamed on the Constitution itself. To blame the Constitution for unemployment, inequality, and poverty is to misdiagnose both the history of apartheid colonialism and the practical weaknesses of the implementation. Our task is not to weaken the constitutional order. Our task is to make the Constitution live in the factory, the farm, the township, rural village, the classroom, the clinic, the police station, and the household, where dignity is still daily denied. The ANC does not approach the Constitution as a matter of convenience. We do not celebrate judicial authority only when it flatters us and attack it when it corrects us. A constitutional court is not an external assault on the democratic state. It is one of the ways in which the Constitution speaks to all arms of the state. When the court pronounces on parliamentary procedure, executive accountability, the processing of legislation, or the obligations on public power, it strengthens our democracy. It reminds that no party, no minister, no official, and no institution stand above the Constitution. That is why the ANC, as a liberation movement that fought for this constitutional order, must be first in line to defend judicial independence, legality, accountability, and the separation of powers. Of course, that does not mean there would be no instances where the movement or even the democratic state will disagree with certain positions adopted by courts. However, there is no contradiction between a revolutionary transformation and a constitutional discipline. In fact, without discipline, transformation becomes a slogan. Without accountability, power becomes patronage. Without the rule of law, the poor suffer first and suffer the most. Honorable members, this budget is also considered at a time when the world is marked by dangerous fragmentation, wars, unilateralism, protectionism, debt distress, climate shocks, food insecurity, disinformation, and narrow nationalism are reshaping global politics. South Africa is not insulated from these storms. We have seen attempts, particularly from the right-wing quarters abroad and their local echo chambers, to distort South Africa's reality, to weaponize our internal challenges, and to punish our country for pursuing an independent international foreign policy. This includes hostilities towards South Africa's principled stance on the devastation in Gaza and the case we brought before the International Court of Justice regarding what South Africa has characterized as a genocidal conduct by the State of Israel. But South Africa must not be bullied into silence. The ANC-led government has placed our country on the side of the international law, human rights, multilateralism, and the right of all people to self-determination. This is consistent with the best traditions of our movement and with the Constitution's injunctions that South Africa should build a united democratic country able to take its rightful place as a sovereign state in the family of nations. The legacy of South Africa's G20 presidents under the theme of solidarity, equality, and sustainability must be understood in this context. We use that platform to lift the priorities of Africa and the global south: fair trade, debt sustainability, climate justice, development financing, food security, industrialization, and a more equitable world order. This budget ensures that the presidents can continue to coordinate that global work while strengthening the domestic foundation of our democracy. Our international role cannot be separated from our African responsibility. South Africa is an economic anchor of the Southern Africa. And because of the relative size and sophistication of our economy, our infrastructure, our financial system, and our labor market, we are a major receiving country for migrants from the region and the rest of the continent. This is not an accident. It is a product of history, geography, unequal regional development, and continental search by millions of African people for work, safety, and dignity. The ANC's position must be very clear and principled. We reject xenophobia. We reject vigilantism, as the president was indicating. But we reject the demonization of African migrants too. We also strongly condemn and reject the display of arrogance and contempt from some of our foreign nationals living in our country. No human being should be attacked, humiliated, or denied basic rights because of nationality. We must never confuse criminality with nationality. The criminal conduct of the few must never become the identity of the entire people. At the same time, Pan-Africanism cannot mean that South Africa alone carry every social, administrative, and security consequences of regional underdevelopment or an irregular migration. Neighborliness is not a one-sided duty. Sister African governments also have responsibilities towards their citizens who live in our country, who live, work, and trade in South Africa. They have a responsibility to cooperate on documentation, consular support, law enforcement, voluntary return where appropriate, skills partnership, reintegration, and conduct of their nationals abroad. We therefore urge all our brothers and sisters on the African continent not to be hasty to condemn South Africa, as though the actions of a few define the whole nation. Such an approach risks deepening suspicion, fragmentation in the continent, and isolation of South Africa from the very African solidarity that we all need. Equally, we urge all South Africans not to surrender to anger, prejudice, and vigilantism. The answer is a capable state, lawful migration management, regional cooperation, decent work, secure communities, and the rebuilding of local communities. We must also speak plainly about the role and the actions of the private sector. It is too easy for business to lament instability while avoiding its own responsibility for investment, decent employment, and compliance with labor law. There are employers who have exploited the desperation of vulnerable migrants, including undocumented workers, to depress wages, evade benefits, and avoid bargaining obligations, and weaken the position of the South African workers. They then pass the social cost of this conduct to government and municipalities, as well as poor communities. Mr. President, this conduct by some within the business community is entirely unpatriotic. It is economically reckless. A country cannot build social cohesion when desperate people are set against one another in the race to the bottom. The ANC has always insisted that the dignity of labor is indivisible. A worker is not less worthy because she was born beyond our borders. But neither must migration be abused to undermine South African workers, trade unions, wage standards, and lawful employment. Corporate South Africa must also answer a larger question. At the same time, when communities are desperate for jobs, industrial renewal, and local procurement, non-financial companies have been holding historically high levels of deposits. Liquidity must become fertile. Machinery, skills, logistics, capacity, township enterprises, agro-processing, renewable energy components, rail rolling stock, water infrastructure, and export industry. The government cannot do the work that is expected alone, but it requires the participation of the private sector. We have a resilient constitution, we have a democratic institution that will stand the serious test. We have a president that must coordinate the rebuilding of the state, the acceleration of reform and scaling of employment programs, the defense of the rule of law, and repositioning of South Africa as a confident African state. By supporting the Budget Vote 1, we choose constitutionalism over chaos, transformation over cynicism, delivery over empty slogans, Pan-African solidarity over xenophobia, lawful migration management over vigilantism, and the dignity of work over the despair and the unemployed in our country. The ANC support Budget Vote 1, the President. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Ntuli. Honorable Dr. K. Litchfield Chabalala.
Ngiyabonga mgcini sihlalo Gwaza Mkhonto sibulise emakhaya sibulise nakumongameli we-MK Party President Jacob Zuma nabaphulaphula emakhaya athe eMaswati cha ayikusisiyala asiphumeleli. We can never pass this budget with such lofty ideals. Number one, it grow the economy. You can't grow the economy, Mr. President. You don't have that power under a neoliberal economy. And a neoliberal economy for us Africans become a neo-colonial economy. Because once you liberalize your economy, you know it yourself. You will reduce tariffs, you are going to deregulate, you are going to rely on Forex, which is why you are going to tell us about attracting foreign direct investment. When you do those things, you are going to shut down your local industries in favor of external ones. You are going to face unemployment. Let's look at the textile industry. It's the industry that Tina were born, we're teenagers in the 80s. That's what supported us. Our mothers worked in factories and firms. From Bramfontein all the way to Doronfontein, past Johannesburg, GP, those were textile industries. From Cape Town all the way to Mowbray, all these areas are ghost towns because after 94, the first decade of 94, when we neoliberalized, we lost at least 150,000 jobs in the textile industry because we lowered tariffs from around 30% to 2 point something. How did we do that when we knew that's the backbone, especially for women in this country? Now, I want to give you two 36-year-olds. One is now 38, Thomas Sankara and Captain Traore. If you really want us to affirm this budget with the proviso that it will grow the economy, throw off the yoke of neoliberalism. Put South Africans first in terms of the economy. Sankara has a phrase. He says, we choose between champagne for all and water for few. Or champagne for few and water for all. I had to ask the young people in my party. Clearly, the ace of spades has been flowing in high echelons in this country. Because we can't provide water for all. And even the water we provide has no quality. It breaks your heart to go to a municipal level. And you see how drinking water is mixing with sewage. And we don't even have a plan to clean that water. We've done the worst under your 2 terms, actually. Even this bottled water is scary for me because the South African Bureau of Standards role has been shrinking and shrinking. We don't know how much plastic we are drinking in this water. So you moved us from water that was deemed the best in 94. Tourists who came here said, South Africans, why drink bottled water? You have the best water, it is clean. We are now reliant on bottled water, which is not even properly checked if it is up to standard in terms of the plastic that's melting into the water. Now, look at infrastructure. And there's nothing you can do about it, really. You can give us lofty promises. I don't know if we should even call it infrastructure. We've become a country of potholes. In big cities like Johannesburg and Pretoria, so how does the rural area look? If that's how it looks there. Unemployment, I'm only looking at one category of young people, 24 to 34. It's sitting at 40%. And then you are telling us you're going to grow the economy. How? Because though we are reliant on borrowing and we are reliant on foreign direct investment, when they come here to invest, they give you conditions that suit them, that do not suit us, which is why we have such a high rising unemployment of young people. So how will you grow this economy? Another quotation that I like by Sankara still. Sankara says Africa is not developing because Africans are not mad enough. Well, I'm looking at you. I don't think we are mad enough to deliver the growth of this economy. Your 2 terms have not assured me that you will because you refuse to decouple yourself from neoliberalism. You still want to believe in macroeconomics. Like we are told now that the GDP is growing, actually amongst its highest. We are told inflation is steady, actually amongst its lowest. See the dilemma of a macroeconomic economy, which is a neoliberal economy, is that it works for multinational corporations, not for the poor. Because despite that GDP and that inflation, the cost of living is high and it's escalating. Lord, in your tenure, Mr. President, you have managed to do the impossible. You shut down Vilakazi Street. It's a ghost town. Township economy is at a grinding halt. People don't have money. So these small and medium businesses are dying at the expense of transnational cooperations. How are you going to grow the economy when you are championing a neoliberal agenda? The two don't mix. Look at the fiscal policy that we champion. Sure, see the contradictions. That's the law of neoliberalism. It is riddled with contradictions for the poor. We are told that our personal income tax system is one of the most progressive ones in the world. But it relies on regressive taxation. Regressive taxation are taxes that continue to tax the poor more while the rich are getting richer. Like VAT, like fuel levy, taxing alcohol, taxing cigarettes. The people are so poor, you're punishing them for the little comfort they're trying to get. Taxing sugar, while multinationals are doing what? Tax evasion. They are transferring their profits abroad without us taxing them adequately. They are price misinvoicing. We are not building the SARS structure that taxes corporates adequately. We are focusing on building the SARS structure that's taxing individuals. So to work in South Africa is a crime because you bear the brunt of taxation. We lose annually, Mr. President, from illicit financial flows. This loose corporate tax system we are running, an estimate of at least 100 billion rands. And that's in the cigarette industry. Only, I'm not talking the other areas. Imagine if we halved that, how much difference it would make in the tax brackets of ordinary people. We will lower taxation. You want MK to confirm this budget, talk to us about lowering taxation of individuals. Talk to us about lowering personal income tax and taxing multinationals. Then we shall stand here and say, oh, the African in the African National Congress is alive. It has come back. So we'll support you. At the moment you are running a national Congress, the African is dead. So we can't support this because we are standing for Africans. And then you tell us you are going to dismantle criminal syndicates. How? The criminal syndicates are in your house. How are you going to dismantle them? They are in your living room. How will you dismantle them? They are under the sofa. They are in the constitutional and the legal system. They are in the municipalities. They're in the police. In the defense force, whole caches of arms go missing. How are we running a defense force where people can just break in and steal weapons?
Order, honorable member.
How are we going to do
Honorable
that? So,
Chabalala.
for us,
Can you just take your seat? There's a member who wants to raise a point of order.
the seat.
Order. Honorable Chabalala, there is a seat here.
It's on the other side.
Okay, we will provide for the other seat. Honorable Nyai.
Honorable Speaker, I rise on Rule 85. The honorable member casts expression that in the House of the President there are criminal syndicates.
Honorable member, thank you very much. I've noted your point of order, but my understanding, and that can be checked, is that the you was in reference not to an individual, but generally. Honorable member, you can continue.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. You know, these interruptions do not actually tamper with my trail of thought because it's not me speaking, it's ancestors. So let's continue. Mr. President, if you really want us as MK Party to support this budget, Africanize it. Get in touch with your Afrocentric side. I know you lost it long ago, but it's not a lost cause. You can still get it back. Gwaza mkonto gwaza. Gwaza mkonto gwaza. Vote MK Party, vote. Vote MK Party, vote. Amandla Progressive Alliance, Amandla. Amandla.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Leader of the Democratic Alliance, Honorable Michalakis.
Madam Speaker, happy birthday. Madam Speaker, Mr. President, the first duty of any democratic government is not merely to govern, but to protect. It is to create the conditions in which citizens may live freely, pursue opportunity, and enjoy the rights guaranteed to them by the Constitution. Freedom is precious, yet no society can exist where every individual exercises absolute freedom without restraint. In a constitutional democracy, citizens willingly surrender a measure of that freedom in exchange for something greater, the protection of their lives, their liberty, and their property under the rule of law. This is the essence of the social contract. It is the foundation upon which every democratic state rests, and it is the standard against which every government must ultimately be judged. When the state fails in this responsibility, the consequences are devastating. Not only are lives lost, but public confidence in government, democracy, and the Constitution itself begins to erode. That is why the crisis within South Africa's criminal justice system is not merely a departmental failure. It is a failure of governance. It strikes at the heart of the state's most fundamental obligation to its people. Honourable Speaker, if we are serious about changing the trajectory of our country, if we are serious about restoring faith in public institutions, then we must confront an uncomfortable truth. Our criminal justice system is failing at almost every level. On average, 58 South Africans lost their lives every day to violence and are still losing their lives. Behind every statistic is a human story, a child whose future has been stolen, a parent who will never return home, a family permanently shattered. Yet while communities live in fear, we are confronted by a police service whose senior leadership has repeatedly been tainted by allegations of corruption and misconduct. At station level, officers often lack the most basic resources required to perform their duties effectively. Cases that do make it to court are too frequently hampered by incomplete investigations, inadequate prosecution capacity, and overwhelming case backlogs. Beyond this lies a correctional services system unable to account for more than 28,000 parolees, while many offenders emerge from incarceration more dangerous than when they entered. The result is a criminal justice chain that is breaking at every link, from investigation to prosecution to incarceration and ultimately to rehabilitation. This is not merely an administrative concern, Mr. President, it's a profound constitutional failure. When the President says he is prepared to face the mothers who have lost children to gang violence, he makes a serious statement. But the question before us is not whether he can face them. The question is whether the state has done everything within its power to prevent those losses in the first place. Can any of us honestly say that it has? Every day that passes, another 58 South Africans lose their lives. These are not abstract figures on a spreadsheet. They are sons and daughters raised with hope and love. They are mothers and fathers who worked tirelessly to provide for their families. They are elderly citizens who spent a lifetime contributing to society. They are vulnerable children who fall prey to predators because the state has failed to shield them from exploitation and violence. They relied upon government to keep them safe. And that is why this matter is inherently political, not in the narrow partisan sense, but in the truest sense of public responsibility. Every preventable death reflects decisions made, priorities chosen, and policies pursued by those entrusted with governing. If a functioning criminal justice system could save even one innocent life, Mr. President, it would be worth every effort. But we are not speaking of one life, we're speaking of thousands. This is why it is so difficult to understand the resistance to practical alternatives that could strengthen the public safety. What has been proposed is not the weakening of the state, but the strengthening of it. It is not the fragmentation of authority, but the mobilization of all available capacity in service of a common purpose. Provinces and capable metropolitan governments have repeatedly called for greater powers to investigate crime, gather intelligence, manage forensic functions, and develop targeted responses to local crime patterns. This is not a demand for separation. It is an offer of partnership. Where local governments have been empowered to act within their existing mandates, initiatives such as LEAP officers and community safety programs have delivered measurable results. Yet their impact remains constrained by legislative limitations imposed by national government.
Order, Honorable Michalakis. Honorable Reddy, what's the point of order?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. As MK Party, we also want to take this opportunity of wishing you a happy birthday.
And you missed it in the beginning.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. While the DA is talking about children losing lives, the MK is singing happy birthday like fools. What is required now is a willingness for cooperative
Order,
governance.
Honorable Michalakis. Point of order, Honorable Douglas.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I rise on Rule 84. Point of order. Members using unbecoming and parliamentary language in violation of Rule 84 by calling us fools as members of Parliament. I would like him to withdraw. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you. Order is sustained. Honorable Michalakis, please withdraw that statement.
Madam Speaker, I withdraw. However, I must say,
Unconditional, Chief.
Order.
Madam Speaker, I said like fools. I did not call them fools.
Order,
However,
Honorable Member, can you please withdraw? without
I have
any
withdrawn,
condition?
Madam Speaker. I'm just puzzled as to who I insulted, the fools or the MK.
Order, Honorable Michalakis. I think let's just withdraw and you proceed with
I
your
withdraw,
speech.
Madam Speaker.
Thank you.
The Constitution already provides for cooperative governance. What is needed is the political will to give political effect to that principle. The reforms required, Mr. President, do not demand constitutional amendments. They require legislative changes and a simple recognition that every capable institution of government should be empowered to contribute to protecting South Africans. If the President truly believes that this issue should rise above politics, then let us engage these proposals on the merits. Let us ask one simple question: will they save lives? Because that is the measure by which history will judge us. If I were entrusted with the responsibility of addressing this crisis, I would marshal every available resource, every sphere of government, every civil organization, and every capable stakeholder in pursuit of a single objective: reducing violent crime and saving lives. No party political consideration should outweigh the duty. No ideology should be more important than the life of a child. No loyalty should supersede accountability. And that accountability must extend to those whose actions or inactions have contributed to the weakening of our police service, our prosecuting authority, our specialized investigative units, our court, and our correctional system. South Africans deserve a government that confronts failure to not one that recycles it. Honourable Speaker, I do not believe that the President takes pleasure in the loss of a single South African life. I do not doubt that he shares in the grief felt by countless families across the nation. But compassion alone, Mr. President, is not enough. The office he occupies carries immense power and profound responsibility. Through decisive leadership, principled decision-making, and meaningful reform, lives can be saved. The people of South Africa deserve a government that can look them in the eye and say truthfully that it has done everything within its power to protect them. They deserve a government that treats every preventable death as a call to action. They deserve a government that understands that public safety is not merely another policy priority, it's the very foundation upon which freedom, dignity, and democracy depends. It's not too late, Mr. President. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Paulson.
Thank you, Speaker, and many happy returns to you. Greetings to the Commander-in-Chief, the officials of the EFF, commissars, fighters, the members of the Congress of the Left, revolutionary forces across Africa. Speaker, vandag debatteer
Order.
ons oor toesig
Order,
oor die
Honorable Paulson, can you take a seat? Honorable Dagmar, what's the point of order?
Thank you, Speaker. My point of order is the following, that the honourable member always greets the Commander-in-Chief, who is never in the House,
Order,
but he still
Honorable
greets him.
Dagmar. Honorable Dagmar,
And I
that's
wish
not the point of order. Thank you, you can proceed.
Speaker, vandag debatteer ons oor toesig oor die presidentskap van Cyril Ramaphosa se administrasie, 'n administrasie wat fundamenteel losgemaak is van die nasionale krisisse van misdaad, xenofobie en verantwoordbaarheid. President, I just quickly want to go back to a previous life when I worked in my first job as an actuarial clerk at Southern Life. I was tasked to prepare the actuarial reports for the pension and provident funds for the National Union of Mine Workers. My colleague spoke glowingly about the General Secretary of the National Union of Mine Workers. Almost all of them idolized him. So when you took the reins on the 15th of February 2018, I was one of those that expected a different trajectory for this country. So today, Mr. President, I want to give a quick valuation of your presidency based on the committee reports. There are stark discrepancies between the core planning documents of the presidency, suggesting an administration in internal conflict. The annual performance plan lists a total budget of R0 for 2026-2027 financial year. In contrast, the budget report details a vote 1 allocation of 816.8 million. The budget report refers to the strategic plan as the 2025-2026 plan, while the strategic plan itself identifies it as the 2026-2030 plan. The APP sets a target to assess only 50% of socio-economic impact assessment reports submitted to Parliament. The budget report states that Program 3 aims to ensure 80% of socio-economic impact assessment reports are analyzed. The APP targets 3 SONA tracking reports annually, but the budget report's recommendations specifically ask for biannual reports. These contradictions mirror the state of your presidency, Mr. Ramaphosa. It's a hot mess. Mr. President, we thought your greatest legacy would have been taking the apartheid state of Israel to the ICJ, but that boldness faded because you still haven't implemented this Parliament's resolution to expel the Israeli ambassador from South Africa. That motion was passed on the 21st of November 2023, 2.5 years ago. But that is the characterization of your leadership, one of shock and inaction, like a deer caught in the headlights. President Ramaphosa, your administration has an inability to diagnose the depth of national despair. On the 1st of May, you again expressed astonishment and confusion at the ANC's declining support. It's like the day in the Oval Office when Donald Trump played a video of the EFF's 10th anniversary. And instead of discussing bilateral relations with the United States, you took the instructions to persecute the Commander-in-Chief of the Economic Freedom Fighters. In the book, The Pitfalls of National Consciousness, Frantz Fanon warns of a national bourgeoisie, like the ANC, that will use a nostalgic approach to draw legitimacy from the past while overseeing the decay of essential services. Fanon het opgemerk dat leiers dikwels die massas paai en hulle vra om terug te val in die geskiedenis terwyl hulle honger ly. The ANC had an opportunity to attend the conference of the left and join all progressive forces in South Africa in coming up with a plan to build a viable socialist alternative to the current GNU. Just like the ANC was a late signatory to the Freedom Charter, a document they now claim to own, we remain hopeful that you will join the Council of the Left. the ANC did also not attend the Congress of the People in Kliptown in 1955. Jou administrasie se primêre reaksie op die bloedbad op die Kaapse vlakte waar 157 kinders oor 5 jaar in bende geweld vermoor is, was die herhaalde ontplooiing van die weermag onder operasie Prosper. Terwyl die regering geweld projekteer, lei misdaadsbrandpunte soos Mitchells Plain, Manenberg, Delft en Gugulethu onder massiewe hulpbron uitputting. Relying on soldiers to stem the increasing violence is like putting a plaster on a gaping gunshot wound. Die EFF se beroep op elke Suid-Afrikaner, jonk en oud, wat gebuk gaan onder hierdie GNU-regering, die toenemende werkloosheid, die gewelddadige en onveilige lewensomstandighede en die gebrek aan basiese dienste, soos skoon drinkwater en bekostigbare elektrisiteit, om seker te maak dat hulle geregistreer is om op die 4 November 2026 hierdie ANC uit elke munisipaliteit te stem. Baie dankie,
Thank
Speaker.
you, Honorable Member. Your time is up. Honorable Cebekulu.
Ngibonge Mhlonishwa Somlomo. Mhlonishwa Mongameli nendlu yonke. The presidency is not a department responsible for delivering a specific service. It is the center of government tasked with ensuring that departments work together, that policy is coherent, and that commitments made to the people of South Africa are translated into action. For this reason, Budget Vote 1 should not be measured by the number of programs it administers, but by whether the government as a whole is functioning more effectively because of its leadership, Mr. President. There are weaknesses in oversight at the center of government that create systemic risk, including fragmented priorities, inconsistent policy signals, and diluted accountability. There are realities that South Africans experience every day when the government fails to deliver. The IFP welcomes the presidency's effort to strengthen executive coordination, improve policy coherence, and professionalize the public service. The establishment of the head of public administration function has the potential to strengthen merit-based administration, improve stability within the public service, and reduce the disruption caused by instant leadership challenges. South Africa desperately needs a capable state built on competency, professionalism, and integrity. It has been observed that the State of the Nation Address tracking tool has underachieved. This is particularly troubling because the presidency cannot effectively oversee government commitments if it cannot effectively track them. South Africans have heard many promises over the years. What they want now is evidence that those promises are being fulfilled. There are delays in major infrastructure projects, weaknesses in contract management, and slow progress in implementing key reforms. Delayed infrastructure means delayed economic growth. Poor contract management wastes public resources. Slow implementation of reform undermines investor confidence and limits job creation. The government must develop stronger digital monitoring systems for infrastructure projects and contracts performance. A government that is serious about accountability must be able to identify failures early and intervene before projects collapse or cost escalates. There are concerns regarding cybersecurity vulnerabilities across government institutions. As the government increasingly relies on digital systems, protecting public information and ensuring continuity of services becomes essential. The presidency must play a stronger coordinating role in ensuring that departments are adequately prepared to respond to cyber threats and data breaches. The IFP is equally concerned about the slow pace of lifestyle audits and continuing questions surrounding ethical conduct in the public sector. South Africans are tired of hearing about corruption after the fact. They want a system that prevents corruption, detect misconduct early, and ensure swift consequences for those who abuse public office. The presidency has a responsibility to probe coherence and discipline within the executive and to ensure that the government communicates with clarity and purpose. There is a growing threat posed by the illicit economy. Illicit trade undermines legitimate business, reduces tax revenue, fuels organized crime, and destroys employment opportunities. We believe that this challenge requires a coordinated national response and that the presidency should play a leading role in ensuring that departments work together to combat this threat. The IFP will continue to hold the presidency accountable and ensure that it delivers on its mandate and that public resources produce measurable outcomes for the people of South Africa. On that basis, the IFP will support Budget Vote 1. Thank you.
The next speaker is the Honourable Daniels.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker, the Honourable President, all ministers, colleagues, good afternoon, fellow South Africans. We are exceptionally grateful. We are grateful and thankful, Honourable President, for dealing with our cry when it comes to illegal and undocumented foreigners. The issue must never be with foreigners, because we welcome tourists into this Republic of South Africa. But all over the globe, we find that anybody illegal or undocumented is dealt with in accordance with the law of that country. So there is absolutely nothing wrong in the Patriotic Alliance saying abahambe, in particularly to the undocumented and illegal foreigners. The lifting of the rating through Moody's is a positive and very exciting thing that we experience as South Africans. It is reflective from stable to positive. It's reflective, it's a mirror image of what the GNU projects to South Africa. So we are very grateful for that. As the head of state, and that of the national executive, the president plays a critical role with national development objectives, amongst many other leadership responsibilities. Therefore, the PA rises in support of this budget, Vote 1, believing also that this budget is very modest, it is very economical, and we believe that the president can do with a bit more funding considering the responsibilities in the office of the presidency. We support this budget vote because South Africa needs a presidency that is capable, responsive, and focused on delivering results for our people. the presidency remains the nerve center of government, hence our position to support what we see is working. The allocation of 1.9 billion rand is necessary investment in governance. We welcome the funding, albeit our view that it's too economical. And it is directed towards the fight against corruption through institutions such as the SIU, National Prosecuting Authorities Investigative Directorate, and South Africans are tired of corruption robbing communities of services, Honorable President. Jobs and opportunities is what we see, and thank you for your address to the nation, because we see that you are committed to turning the corner, and we thank you and the executive therefore. Respectfully, I will say, our support does not mean silence. Too often, government measures success by a number of meetings held, reports produced, and dashboards created. The people of South Africa do not live on reports. They live in communities where service delivery either works or it does not work. Thank you again for committing to turning the corner in that aspect, as per your earlier on submissions, Honorable President. We thank the presidency who's moved beyond monitoring and become this driving force for implementation. We need struggling municipalities accelerate infrastructure projects and ensure that government commitments translate into tangible results. The Patriotic Alliance therefore thanks the presidency for the committed to strengthen, to support municipalities that are failing residents, to ensure that performance indicators are linked to real service delivery outcomes, and to hold departments accountable when targets are missed. Thank you for the initiatives in aid of our youth, work skills, experiences. We really welcome that, understanding that our youth is looking forward and crying out for help, and they also are very, very, very much responsive to your address, Honorable President. We support because of effective leadership that matters. We support because we're fighting corruption, as we can see. We support because coordination and accountability matters. Our support comes with an expectation that every rand spent must contribute to improving the lives of the Africans and restoring confidence in government. We thank you, Mr. President. Patriotic Alliance is in full support. Thank you.
I now invite the Honourable Mulder.
Honourable Madam Deputy Speaker, today we deal with Vote 1, the Presidency. Mr. President, it's common cause that you and your Presidency are currently under pressure. There are direct attempts to remove you as Head of State in terms of Section 89(1), while others pursue options in terms of Section 102(2) to pass a motion of no confidence. All of these is directly linked to the Pala issue. This issue does have the potential to taint your legacy and to paralyze the remaining almost 3 years of your presidency. I know that you do not need any advice from me, but my advice would be to deal with this issue decisively and with haste. Put the true facts on the table and move on. Mr. President, the executive authority of the Republic is vested in you. You, the Cabinet and the GNU, are responsible to develop and implement national policy. That, Mr. President, includes our international relations policy. The measures and guidelines for enhanced coordination of South Africa's international engagements approved by Cabinet in 2009 to establish more effective measures to conduct our international relations and the implementation of South Africa's foreign policy needs a total overhaul. This is urgent. The world and a lot of things have changed since then. I believe South Africa needs to recalibrate aspects of our US policy. The US remains the largest economy in the world with the strongest military too. It is positive that both countries are now represented on ambassadorial level. A reset in relations with Washington that includes a spectacular new deal can and should be to our benefit and should be a priority. Let us address the outstanding issues that has prevented this possible spectacular deal until now. You know which issues I'm referring to, Mr. President. If you and the GNU can succeed in this, I can assure you that the current pressures on your presidency will pale into insignificance. It will pale into insignificance because the benefits will be there to see and experience for millions of South Africans. At the heart of the New Deal should be a pact on critical minerals. South Africa could open strategic access to exploration, mining, and especially refining of the platinum group minerals, manganese, vanadium, rare earths, and titanium. The US could match this with long-term offtake commitments, targeted reserve build programs, and financing for processing capacity that goes beyond resource headlines to actual throughput. A Johannesburg-based critical minerals exchange hub linked to the US commodity markets could price, hedge, and de-risk flows. The strategic payoff would be immediate. The US secures trusted supplies for electrical vehicles, aircraft, and advanced manufacturing, while South Africa positions itself as a global processing and trading hub, not just a mine pit at the end of another country's value chain. A US-South Africa Middle East hub for mining technology, supply chain traceability, and AI-driven monitoring will draw investment from the US private equity firms and Gulf sovereign wealth funds. A minerals first deal offers spectacular returns for South Africa. It could lift GDP by 40 billion US dollars and create about 500 jobs across mining, processing, energy, logistics, and services. The fixed investment rate would rise from 15 to 25%, enabling growth of 5% per year and halving unemployment over time. That is what we need now. Mr. President, our people are desperate for jobs. Such a transformation would stabilize South Africa and secure democracy. There is no comparable alternative trade deal that could make this possible. For us, for the US, direct gains from minerals, LNG support, exports, technology, and agricultural investments could exceed 75 billion. Such outcomes would justify reducing South Africa's general tariff rate to 10% and keep its privileges under AGOA. Mr. President, I believe that the Government of National Unity and South Africa's private sector are faced with a unique opportunity. With an open door to the White House, this is an opportune time to secure such a watershed deal, one that will deliver and for generations to come. You started your presidency in February 2018 and said, "Tuma mina, send me." Mr. President, your mission is not concluded. You can secure your legacy, our democracy, and bring prosperity, jobs, and safety to millions of South Africans. I believe that Afrikaners and the Freedom Front Plus can assist in making this happen. Once again, here is my hand. Let's do this. Thank you, sir.
The next speaker is the Honourable Hanile.
Namanje Tuma mina.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, honourable members, in the words of Kofi Annan, I quote, "Violence against women is perhaps the most shameful human rights violation. It knows no boundaries of geography, culture, or wealth," close quote. Deputy Speaker, for 2026-2027 financial year, the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities received an overall budget allocation of just over 2.2 billion, of which 1.8 billion will be transferred to the National Youth Development Agency and 111.3 million to the Commission for Gender Equality. This will leave the department with approximately 288 million for its own operations for 2026-27. This is approximately 48 million more than 2025-2026 of the budget that was allocated previously. Honourable Deputy Speaker, the allocation of 288 million to the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities must be viewed against the vast mandate it carries. The department is expected to advance the rights and empowerment of women, youth and persons with disabilities, and the LGBTQIA community, while coordinating government-wide efforts to achieve equality and inclusion. While we acknowledge fiscal constraints, this budget raises concerns about whether the department is adequately resourced to address pressing challenges such as gender-based violence and femicide, youth unemployment, discrimination, and social exclusion. We must strengthen protections for the LGBTQIA+ community by combating hate crimes, ensuring equal access to healthcare, education, employment, and public services, and promoting awareness to eliminate discrimination and prejudice. Most importantly, equality and inclusion cannot be the responsibility of one department alone. Every government department must be held accountable for advancing the rights and dignity of all South Africans. Honorable members, the Presidential Employment Initiative has delivered meaningful results by creating over 1.5 million earning opportunities since 2020 and providing much needed work experience to young people. However, while the initiative has offered hope and relief to many, it cannot be viewed as a complete success when youth unemployment remains alarmingly high. The challenge before us is to move beyond temporary opportunities and create sustainable long-term jobs that restore dignity and economic freedom to our youth. Youth unemployment remains extremely high at over 60% nationally for youth aged between 15 and 35. Many opportunities are temporary rather than permanent. Honorable President, let me paint a picture of what young unemployed people go through on the ground. Vusimuzi, not his real name, lives with his brother, who is the only person with an income. He is only allowed to have 1 meal per day because he is accused of wasting food when he eats more than once. All this, Honorable President, happens because every month when he gets his grant of 350, he has to make a very difficult choice between buying food, buying cosmetics, or save it to use for public transport as he keeps searching for employment. Honorable members, we also need to establish a robust monitoring and evaluation tool to determine whether every rand allocated to the Presidential Youth Employment Initiative is achieving its intended objectives. Without proper oversight and measurable outcomes, simply throwing money at the problem will not reduce the rates of youth unemployment. We must be able to track how funds are spent, how many sustainable jobs are created, and what impact these interventions have on the lives of young people. Without accountability, we risk creating opportunities for corruption where funds disappear while the unemployment crisis persists. As unemployment continues to rise, many young people lose hope and become vulnerable to social ills such as substance abuse, crime, and poverty. We therefore have a responsibility to ensure that every investment made in youth employment delivers real results and creates pathways to sustainable economic participation. Honorable Deputy Speaker, girl learners lose up to 7 days of schooling every month due to lack of access to sanitary products. This is why Parliament introduced the Sanitary Dignity Program for learners in Quintile 1 to Quintile 3 schools. However, a recent report from the Department of Social Development revealed that in Ligwa, only 6 out of 20 schools are receiving sanitary towels. This raises serious concerns about whether funds are allocated for this program are actually reaching their intended beneficiaries. It is for this reason that we have written to the National Treasury requesting that funds allocated for sanitary dignity packs be ring-fenced to ensure they are used solely for their intended purpose. No girl child to be forced to miss school because she cannot afford sanitary products. Access to these products is a matter of dignity, equality, and educational opportunity. In conclusion, we concluded the interviews and submitted the proposed names of individuals to serve on the National Council Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Board in March this year. To date, those appointments have not been made. We urge the President to appoint the board members urgently so that it can be able to start to do its work to assist us in dealing with the scourge of gender-based violence. I thank you.
I now invite the Honourable Mpapane.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker. His Excellency the President and the Deputy President in absentia, Honorable Ministers, colleagues, our guests in the gallery, I greet you all. Honorable Deputy Speaker, Budget Vote 1 of the Presidency remains an important instrument of government aimed at supporting the continued constitutional responsibilities of nation building and freeing the potential of all South Africans. The Presidency, which is widely known as the center of government, is charged with the responsibility of turning possibility into progress and the country's vision into tangible societal transformation agenda for the betterment of all South Africans. Statistics South Africa persistently accounts for the country's high level of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. These evidence-based data remind us that government planning, coordination, and oversight roles are not abstract administration functions. They remain the instrument which the state must use to improve the lives of millions of South Africans. The center of government is not merely measured by the power it holds, but by the lives it improves. Allow me to borrow the words of Lee Kuan Yew, who said, and I quote, "The future is not built by chance, it is built by design," close quote. The seventh administration should embrace and intensify efforts to accelerate effective implementation of government plans, policies, programs in order to deliver services to the citizens. South Africans measure government performance by assessing outcomes and their lived conditions, such as the provisions of services, quality healthcare, quality education, safety and security, reliable and affordable electricity, water provision, a government that fights corruption, and whether public institutions work for the benefit of the people. They do not measure government by its sound plans, policies, or programs. Honorable Madam Deputy Speaker, the Presidency carries a profound constitutional responsibility to give direction for the realization of hopes and aspirations of society by ensuring that government systems deliver on the electoral mandate contained in the Mid-Term Development Plan and the National Development Plan. The President outlined government priorities during the 2026 State of the Nation address. All state institutions are therefore expected to implement SONA commitments as outlined. Madam Deputy Speaker, the 2026 State of the Nation address reaffirmed government priorities and emphasized accelerated implementation, infrastructure reform, professionalization of the public service, and strengthened consequence management, thereby reinforcing central coordination role of the Presidency. The success of any government and the implementation of its key strategies and reforms depends on the center of government coordinating efforts to achieve priority outcomes. To strengthen accountability and ensure the effective implementation of government commitments, we fully support the development of digital tracking tool in the form of a dashboard to monitor the implementation of all major projects and the MTDP. We call for the acceleration of the dashboard as part of enhancing monitoring and enabling agile intervention by the Presidency.
They will enable legislatures and members of the public to measure progress, promote transparency and accountability. The public service should embrace the role of digitalization and artificial intelligence. The government needs to have an AI use policy to avoid the embarrassment we experienced in the past month. E-governance improves government services by making them more accessible, faster and more responsive. South Africans are ready to access government services online rather than traveling long distances to government offices, which are often characterized by long queues and administrative burdens. However, digital transformation must be accompanied by efforts to bridge the digital divide to ensure that rural communities, persons with disabilities, and vulnerable groups are not left behind. The rural network quality must be accelerated to ensure communities have access to reliable, affordable broadband connectivity. Your Excellency, the full benefits of the release of the spectrum are yet to be experienced in our schools and public facilities. For example, the wonderful program of free public Wi-Fi in Tshwane, which was introduced by then former Executive Mayor, the Honorable Minister Ramaphosa, which has ceased to exist after he left office. We must re-examine the intervention and ensure all towns, cities, and villages have access to free public Wi-Fis. It is necessary to grow our digital economy and increase equitable opportunities for South Africans. Issues relating to cybersecurity vulnerabilities across the state institutions, many of which lack adequate response capabilities, require a more coordinated, rapid response. For example, it has been alleged that the city of Ekurhuleni lost approximately 2 billion rands due to a combination of cyber-enabled manipulation of its billing system, electricity meter tampering, and alleged insider collusion. The government must strengthen cybersecurity measures and investigative capabilities to avoid similar situations. Madam Deputy Speaker, one of the most important aspects of policy coordination concerns regulatory coherence. Operation Vulindlela is one of the most fundamental and impactful programs established under the stewardship of His Excellency President Ramaphosa through a collaboration between the Presidency and the National Treasury. Phase 1 of the program has indeed yielded significant improvements for the country. However, Parliament will ensure that the South Africans continue to experience tangible improvements in their daily lives by conducting effective oversight of the Operation Vulindlela program. South Africans have already noticed improvements resulting from the program, including the elimination of load shedding. Operation Vulindlela has strengthened energy security, increased tourism, expedited water rights release, and enhanced economic confidence under the leadership of the President and President Ramaphosa. We welcome your focus on fixing local government. The Presidential Working Group in eThekwini and the Presidential Task Team in Joburg are critical measures for the Presidency to get our cities working. We are confident that the implementation of the trading services model will contribute to improving basic service provision. We support the process
of the review of the white paper on local government, and we believe that a restructured local government fiscal framework will contribute to improving municipal performance and impact through increased capital investment. The program has demonstrated the importance of removing structural barriers that inhibit economic growth and undermine investor confidence. Through its oversight role, Parliament will ensure that the momentum of these reforms is sustained, implementation bottlenecks are addressed, and responsible institutions are held accountable for delivering on their commitments. We intend to provide rigorous and continuous scrutiny on both phases 1 and 2 of Operation Vulindlela, including its success and shortcomings. In collaboration with other parliamentary committees, we will assist in ensuring that accountability through a well-coordinated legislative oversight process for the delivery of program outcomes. The program must continue to advance the country's development through economic growth, job creation, and poverty reduction. Honorable Deputy Speaker, strengthening preventative measures through compulsory lifestyle audits in the public administration remains one of the most critical tools for detecting officials living beyond their means. Consequence management for wrongdoing among public servants must be enforced. We welcome measures by the President to assess the performance of ministers and call on the President to ensure the highest levels of performance are attained, and ministers who do not perform should be held accountable. We call on the President to ensure all ministers sign performance agreements with their Director Generals and assessments are done in a robust manner with consequence management for non-performance. Non-compliance with this should not be acceptable at the highest level of government. Furthermore, President, the delegation of responsibilities to deputy ministers is a critical matter which must be clear and publicly pronounced, just as the President assigned tasks to the deputy president. Where clear functions are not assigned, this ought to be concluded. The empowerment of the SIU is crucial in fighting against crime and corruption in the public sector. The SIU should be granted greater capacity, powers, and responsibilities to conduct lifestyle audits across all 3 spheres of government without having to rely on proclamation and memoranda of understanding. This should send a strong message to all public servants regarding government's commitment to combating corruption. As we draw closer to the midterm of the 7th administration, the presidency has to begin to process.
Your time has expired.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker. The ANC supports Budget Vote 1, the presidency.
The next speaker is the Honourable Trollip.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, the Presidency describes itself as the centre of government, responsible for coordination, implementation of monitoring and oversight, but coordination is not an outcome in itself. South Africans judge government on job creation, water in their taps, safety in their neighbourhoods, functioning municipalities and a growing economy. You say these things are improving. Public sentiment and the numbers speak of something different. The report expresses concern about the manifestation of SONA promises and tracking of progress. I'll be generous, Honourable President, and I won't question your flights of fantasy this year. But where's the smart city? Where's the bullet train? And where's Tintswalo's job? Your promises have been exposed as venal and empty. Last Parliament has established an oversight committee of the Presidency. Now we can have a proper debate. The report notes weak oversight of the Presidency creates risks such as fragmented priorities, inconsistency policy signals, and diluted accountability. For example, the lifestyle audits you promised yet have not materialized. The presidency tells us the system is being developed. The emperor has no clothes. Why did the ANC oppose this committee for so long? Even former DGs who admitted opposing its establishment now recognize its importance. Mr. President, you read out a long list of people to thank for their support in the presidency. Deputy President, multiple ministers and deputy ministers whose responsibility is to monitor and oversight performance of government. They've clearly failed their responsibility. Your vote is responsible for the performance of our Chapter 9 institutions created to protect our constitutional democracy. Let's evaluate some of them. The South African Human Rights Council is facing 24,000 signatures calling for their dissolution. The Public Protector is involved with more public controversy than protection, including your own controversy. The IEC, whose independence and dependability are called more and more into question every election. The Auditor General faces and continues an uphill struggle to enforce accountability. All of these institutions are faced with declining trust levels. Chapter 10 institutions deal with public administration and the principles of good governance, yet report acknowledges inconsistent performance, weak recruitment practices, and skills shortages. Administrators guilty of gross misconduct, gross dishonesty, move seamlessly from one institution to the other. You yourself, Honourable President, went to Nelson Mandela Bay and praised the mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay, yet in this parliament in the same week, she was castigated for maladministration and poor management. The presidency is responsible for driving the implementation of the MDP and the MTDP that should focus on jobs and growth creation, poverty reduction, and capable developmental state. Yet the illicit economy and illegal immigration are allowed to negatively impact employment, revenue collection, investor confidence, and economic growth. The question is why? You, Mr. President, are responsible for coordinating strategic infrastructure through the Presidential Coordinating Commission. We still face load reduction. Our taps are running dry, not because there's no water, but there's no maintenance of our infrastructure. And municipal collapse, which is no better on display than in Johannesburg, where water outages prevail despite the Vaal River water system flooding. If your presidency is the center of government, sir, then you must accept responsibility, not only for coordinating plans, but for delivering results. South Africans cannot eat coordination or drink oversight and cannot find jobs in strategy documents. They need jobs that you so flippantly refer to amidst record unemployment in our country. You cannot talk about a growing economy and job creation when you look at the statistics that represent the lived realities of South Africans. If you do that without concern of those realities, it means you actually care less about the realities of those figures. Action SA will not be supporting this budget. Thank you.
I now invite the Honourable Meshwe.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, Honourable President, Honourable Members. Today, as we debate Budget Vote 1 on the presidency, we cannot ignore the Phala scandal that continues to cast a dark shadow over the presidency. We are heartened, however, by the recent Concord ruling that ensured that Parliament finally does the right thing and establishes an impeachment committee. We hope this will help bring this matter to a close. During the President's inauguration speech in 2018, he spoke about the hope that was dawning for South Africa. This, particularly given the years of corruption and scandals that had overshadowed the Zuma presidency. And then after President Ramaphosa's speech, we all felt much more hopeful and positive about the future of our country. At that time, I implored the President to be a man of principle who would not buy face. Sadly, the Pala scandal has dragged on for about 6 years now and has left the public shocked and deeply disappointed. The report of the Section 89 Independent Panel, chaired by retired Chief Justice Andile Ngcobo, clearly concluded that the President had a case to answer. The President has applied, we know that the President has applied for a High Court review of this report, which may unfortunately drag this matter and delay the conclusion of the Pala matter. In the meantime, I want to urge the President to answer 2 questions, simple ones, that members of the public are always asking us for answers. And the first question is, who brought and hid the money on the farm? And the second one is, if the money was from the proceeds of the sale of animals or buffaloes in particular, as we have been told, why was it necessary to hide it in the sofa where it was later discovered? Answers to these questions will go a long way to help ease the
Can we focus
outrage.
on budget?
My apologies, Honourable Meshwe. Honourable members, please do not switch on your microphones just to comment. I would also perhaps just alert the Honourable Meshwe that you have to stay clear of Rule 90 in terms of anticipation of matters before the court and parliamentary processes. Please proceed.
Thank you. Answers to these questions will go a long way to help ease the outrage so many people feel. The scandal raises serious questions about integrity, justice, financial transparency. How can citizens trust the government when our head of state looks like he is hiding something and evading accountability and justice? With the local government election looming, we do not want the Pala matter to dominate the public discourse. Rather, politicians and political parties should be focusing on finding solutions for the many problems facing our communities and dysfunctional municipalities, where we need stronger accountability and better delivery. May I advise the President to learn from the wisdom of King Solomon, who once said, "A good name is to be desired above riches. To be esteemed is better than silver or gold." Citizens deserve a president that leads by integrity, exemplary conduct, and not by controversy. I thank you, Speaker.
And I invite the Honourable Minister in the Presidency.
Chanda chamdzura chituro wandu ya butano ya rushaka murangapanda wa shango vo Cyril Ramaphosa mudzura chituro wa portfolio committee ya presidency colleagues dzanga minister na deputy ministers, chief whip of the largest party, mirado yandu ya butano ya rushaka vaeni vathonipa yao. Deputy Speaker, the budget votes are not simple statements of expenditure. They are policy statements and key instruments for transparency, accountability, and parliamentary oversight. I rise to present the details of Budget Vote 1 of the Presidency. For the financial year 2026-27, the Presidency's allocation is 816.8 million within the MTF budget of 2.3 billion. The APP also reflects a staff count of 534 in 2026-27, increasing to 594 by 28-29, as institutional capacity and capability is strengthened. This represents an increase of 7.1% from the previous financial year. This increase ensures that we have the necessary capacity to drive the ambitious reforms agenda, specifically capacitating our policy and research services, as well as the project management office. This allocation will be used to support the work of the presidency across 3 core programs: administration, executive support, and policy and research services. The strategic plan, Honorable Paulse, is 2026 to 2030 because it's a medium-term plan. And the APP is 1 year because it's an annual performance plan. Honorable members, the progress that South Africa is making, albeit the challenges still confronting us, is a result of deliberate and coordinated efforts. And the task of the presidency is to ensure that government priorities do not remain just intentions. They must become funded outputs, tracked commitments, resolved blockages, and measurable progress. The president has said the presidency does not build every road, operate every clinic, repair every water system, as those responsibilities lie with line departments, provinces, municipalities, and public entities. However, the presidency carries the responsibility to ensure that government functions and South Africa works. A working South Africa requires a capable state. Too often, government has been criticized for producing sound plans which are hamstrung by weaker implementation. It is for this reason that the presidency is focused on ensuring disciplined execution. As the institutional mechanism through which cabinet priorities are turned into coordinated action across government departments and spheres of government, the presidency will focus on tracking cabinet decisions to closure, maintaining decentralized records of implementation, ensuring that departments provide to cabinet credible evidence of implementation. To achieve this, the presidency will strengthen cabinet and committee processes, the cluster system, the forum of South African Directors General, and the decision-taking mechanisms that ensure that cabinet decisions are implemented. This is part of our efforts to integrate cabinet decision-making, intergovernmental coordination, and monitoring systems to reduce the gap between commitment and delivery across government. Honorable Deputy Speaker, South Africa is dealing with complex and interconnected challenges of unemployment, water security, infrastructure backlogs, local government instability, organized crime, gender-based violence and femicide, public sector capacity constraints, and the need to sustain economic reform momentum. These challenges cannot be resolved by one department acting alone. They require coordinated state action, clear ownership, reliable reporting, and structured escalation. As highlighted by the President, Operation Vulindlela remains a key platform for reform coordination. Its purpose remains that of ensuring that reforms are implemented, tracked, and translated into economic impact. The presidency will therefore continue to support the President and Cabinet in driving structural reforms. This includes monitoring reform milestones, identifying risks, ensuring that departments report on progress, and escalating blockages that delay implementation. Honorable members, many of the most urgent service delivery pressures are experienced at local government. Water interruptions, poor road maintenance, electricity distribution failures, waste management challenges, and weak municipal financial controls affect the daily lives of our people. The President, during SONA 2026, committed to accelerate fixing local government, with priority given to metro municipalities, whilst also ensuring capacity building and improving service delivery across all municipalities. Since 2024, we have provided feedback on the progress being made in eThekwini as supported by the Presidential Working Group on eThekwini. Although the city of Johannesburg still faces major constraints, which the DA and Mr. Mashaba of Now Action SA must take part responsibility for, we are starting to see some green shoots. We are witnessing concrete progress in the city of Johannesburg's efforts to reclaim the Johannesburg Central Business District through a coordinated high-impact service delivery program that was launched in February 2025. And they said to Mr. President, we are doing it for the G20, but the program is still running. This program includes inner city bylaw enforcement, JMPD visibility as a deterrent to criminal activities, environmental health initiatives, development planning compliance, city power and JRA service deliveries, amongst others. As a result, the city has restored law and order along Lillian Ngoyi, Plain, De Villiers, Newgate, and small streets and their adjoining corridors. On the financial control side, the City of Johannesburg is working closely with National Treasury on the metro trading reforms and financial recovery and revenue enhancements, work which includes revenue performance monitoring, improving billing accuracy and data recovery as guided by the city's comprehensive financial turnaround framework. We are confident that the work of the Presidential Working Group on Johannesburg in support of the COJ's efforts will gain momentum. The work of the Presidential Working Groups in the metros are part of the broader local government reform that are being pursued with agency. Municipal capability, financial discipline, governance, and consequence management are being strengthened. We appreciate that communities cannot be asked to wait while institutional failure gets corrected. The role of the presidency is to ensure that challenges at municipalities are not treated as isolated municipal problems, but as national priorities requiring coordinated action and accountable follow-through. The strengthened intergovernmental coordination is part of the implementation of the district development model. Honorable members, the focus on decontaminating the criminal justice system has been highlighted in the National Intelligence Estimates, and this can be read in the 2021-2024 NIE as published in 2025. The work to decontaminate the criminal justice system of criminal elements is important to the presidency as the ultimate custodian of national security and the coordinator of the work of the National Security Council. And the work of the Madlanga Commission is helping to fast-track the identification and confirmation of criminal elements within the SAPS and the criminal justice system and the criminal networks that have sought to capture the criminal justice system. During the State Security Agency budget vote, I indicated that SSA is making progress in implementing the SONA directive of the President to vet senior management of the South African Police Service, including lifestyle audit. Phase 1, which entails the vetting of 32 SAPS senior management members who are lieutenant generals and major generals, is in an advanced stage. The SSA is further reviewing its vetting regulations.
Honourable Minister, can you please take your seat? Honourable Lonzi, what is your point of order?
No, thank you, Deputy Speaker. I think the President needs a comfort break because he keeps looking down and closing his eyes. So we're very concerned. Thanks.
Thank you, Honourable Lonzi. I'm quite sure the President will rest whenever he feels like it. Honourable Minister, please proceed.
The SSA is reviewing its vetting regulations to ensure full compliance to the provisions of the National Strategic Intelligence Act that directs that vetting function includes in-depth lifestyle audit and reporting of criminal activities of auditees to law enforcement. We cannot allow also, ladies and gentlemen, the problem of illegal immigration to threaten national security and social cohesion. As the President has indicated that government has been implementing measures to deal with illegal immigration in South Africa and protect the economic rights and interests of South Africans. In addition to the increased workplace labor inspections, the President has mentioned additional measures include: 1, government in 2023 established the Border Management Authority to address the weaknesses in border management and make sure that our borders are not porous. 2, the Department of Home Affairs has been increasing the number of deportations of undocumented foreign nationals year on year since 2022, despite the capacity constraints. 3, the Cabinet approved the revised white paper on citizenship, immigration, and refugee protection in March 2026. At the relevant post-cabinet briefing, we clarified that the white paper improves the management of migrant reception arrangements and also provides for Section 22 of the Constitution in terms of economic rights of South Africans. 4, the Department of Employment and Labor has finalized the National Labor Migration Policy that introduces maximum quotas for documented foreign nationals, and provides for the prosecution of employers hiring undocumented foreign nationals. In addition, Cabinet has approved the submission to Parliament of the Employment Services Amendment Bill, which empowers the Minister of Employment and Labour to set quotas in respect of employment of foreign nationals in any economic sector and occupational category. 5, currently 26,364 criminal offenders who are foreign nationals are held in correctional services facilities, debunking the myth that law enforcement is not able to arrest foreign nationals when they commit crimes in South Africa. In addition, the Department of Small Business Development is continuing to ensure the implementation of the National Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises and Informal Business Licensing Framework, which restricts business licensing to South Africans and individuals with valid migration status. Therefore, there is no need for peacetime heroes in addressing illegal immigration. Law enforcement must be left to law enforcement authority, and the authorities will deal decisively with those who act against the laws of our country and the Constitution of our Republic. Honorable members, the Presidency's role must be clearly understood. The Presidency leads, coordinates, oversees, advises, communicates, and intervenes where necessary. This enables delivery across government. The Presidency will continue to track implementation of SONA and MTDP commitments, assess progress across clusters, and ensure that delivery failures requiring executive intervention are escalated. This work is not administrative, it is political and constitutional accountability in practice. Citizens must be able to see what government committed to, what has been done, what is delayed, and what corrective action is being tabled. Honorable members, the third apex priority of government is to build capable, ethical, and developmental states. The Presidency will continue to support the professionalization of the public service, performance management reform, ethical governance, and consequence management. Corruption and weak governance undermine delivery. They drain resources, damage public trust, and weaken the legitimacy of the state. The Presidency will continue to monitor and report to Parliament on the implementation of the National Anti-Corruption Strategy, the State Capture Commission response actions, the SIU reports and referral processes. Our quest is to move from culture of delayed consequences to a culture of visible accountability. The public must know that government takes seriously the responsibility to protect public resources and to act against wrongdoing. Delivery in the modern state requires reliable information systems. A center of government cannot coordinate effectively if it depends on fragmented reporting, manual processes, weak records, and delayed information. The Presidency will therefore prioritize digital transformation, decision-taking system, information integrity, cyber security, and modernized internal system. Internal modernization is not an administrative luxury. It is a delivery requirement. When systems function, coordination improves. When reporting is accurate, escalation is credible. When records are reliable, accountability is strengthened. Honorable members, South Africa's international engagement must reinforce domestic development. The Presidency will support the President and the Deputy President in advancing South Africa's national interest on the international stage, including through the BRICS, SADC, the African Union, and other multilateral platforms. The APP highlights the need for stronger alignment between foreign policy position and domestic reform objectives, including through a consolidated international relations position framework. This means that international agreements, partnerships, and engagements must be tracked for outcomes. They must support investment, trade development, infrastructure, skills, and South Africa's strategic interests. Our international work must not stand apart from our domestic priorities. It must help advance them. Honorable Deputy Speaker, public confidence depends not only on what government does, but also on how honestly and clearly government communicates. The Presidency continues to oversee communication strategy implementation through the Government Communication and Information System and support coherent national messaging, stakeholder engagement, transparency, and public access to information. Government must speak clearly to citizens, but it must also listen to its citizens. The work of communication is therefore not propaganda, it is democratic accountability. Honorable Deputy Speaker, 2026-27 is the year of acceleration. Acceleration requires focus. We do this in a year of profound national significance. Our country marks 70 years since the historic 1956 Women's March to the Union buildings. We mark 60 years since the District 6 forced removals. We mark 50 years since the 1976 youth uprising. We also mark 30 years since the adoption of our democratic constitution. These milestones remind us that freedom was never achieved through symbolism alone. It was achieved through courage, organization, sacrifice, and action. Therefore, our commemoration of these moments cannot be ceremonial only. It must be reflected in the lived experiences of South Africans. To honor the women of 1956, we must strengthen the fight against gender-based violence and femicide and advance women empowerment unashamedly and unrelentingly. To honor the communities displaced through forced removals, we must improve access to services, infrastructure, and local development. We must also make sure that the land is returned back to its rightful owners. To honor the youth of 1976, we must intensify our work on employment, skills, public employment pathways, and economic opportunities. And to honor 30 years of the Constitution, we must ensure that the constitutional rights are experienced not only in law, but in daily life. Honorable members, it is President Ramaphosa who just did not admit to challenges in water service delivery, but instituted corrective actions. He directed the reinstatement of the drop reports to improve accountability and transparency, to deal with leaks, pollution of drinking water, and the implementation of our action plans. It is President Ramaphosa who acknowledged that the criminal justice system must be strengthened, and to the charging of the DA, they appointed the Madlanga Commission, which is accelerating the fight to decontaminate the criminal justice system. Therefore, vote 1 of the presidency is a vote that prioritizes and ensures the delivery of a South Africa that works. Ndoribu Mzurashtu.
I now invite the Honourable Kwankwa.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, the UDM supports Budget Vote 1. South Africa faces enormous socio-economic challenges: stubborn unemployment, deep poverty, rising inequality, and sluggish economic growth. Yet, despite these challenges, our economy remains one of the most developed and diversified on the continent. That reality makes South Africa a magnet for migrants seeking economic opportunities, including those who enter or remain in our country illegally. President, we want to make it categorically clear that on the issue of illegal immigration, we stand with South Africans who are calling for the lawful enforcement of our immigration laws. President, no country in the world is expected to simply look the other way when faced with illegal and undocumented migration. No country is told that enforcing its laws is somewhat immoral. Yet in South Africa, whenever the issue is raised, we are immediately subjected to lectures, labels, and moral grandstanding. South Africans are told that they must not complain, they must not ask questions, they must not expect their laws to be enforced. They must simply absorb the consequences and remain silent. What is even more remarkable, President, is the persistent attempt to reduce this complex issue to race. We are constantly told by those who are intellectually lazy that white undocumented foreigners are not targeted. Well, if they were competing for jobs in Guguletu, in Tanzania, in Kaili, Chakwamashu, and Soweto, if they were concentrated in township economies, petrol stations, restaurants, and informal businesses, if they were directly competing for some opportunities and limited resources that millions of poor South Africans rely on, they too would be part of this debate. The reality is that the issue is not primarily about race, it's about economics, it's about opportunity, unemployment, competition for scarce resources. Pretending otherwise may be politically convenient for some, but it does nothing to address the legitimate concerns of South Africans who live with these realities on a daily basis. But apparently pointing out this obvious fact has somehow become controversial. President, we are also Pan-Africanists, but we are not naive. We reject this Temu version of Pan-Africanism that appears only when South Africa is expected to make sacrifices. We're told that South Africans must carry the burden of poor leadership and governance failures elsewhere on the continent. We're told that South Africans must never complain. We're told that South Africans must never ask difficult questions. I therefore want to ask a number of questions which are important. Where is this Pan-Africanism when African leaders are bought by the West and Morocco to vote against African interests in international forums such as the IPU? Where is this Pan-Africanism when South Africa came under fire under sustained verbal attacks from the US during your G20 presidency? Lastly, and perhaps more importantly, where was Pan-Africanism when 14 South African soldiers paid with their lives in pursuit of peace and stability on the continent? 14 lives lost, families shattered, coffins draped in South African flag. What happened afterwards? The DRC and the US signed agreements giving American companies priority access to the DRC's mineral wealth. America secured the deal. We buried our soldiers. Too often, solidarity is demanded from South Africa but barely reciprocated. Solidarity, President, without reciprocity is exploitation. Partnership without mutual benefit is dependency. And the Pan-Africanism without accountability is a scam and merely a slogan, and we reject it with the contempt it deserves. We therefore support the enforcement of South Africa's immigration laws. At the same time, we reject violence, intimidation, and attacks against foreign nationals. The rule of law must prevail. Ke a leboga.
The next speaker is the Honourable Milam.
Deputy Speaker, it's often said that insanity is doing the same thing repeatedly and expecting a different result. In South Africa, we call that energy policy. For 17 years, the ANC has promised to fix electricity. 17 years, Mr. President, of war rooms, 17 years of emergency plans, 17 years of presidential announcements. And still, the same broken machine remains. Monopoly thinking, political delay, municipal collapse, Eskom failure, and consumers paying more for less. This is Budget Vote 1. This is the presidency. Responsibility cannot be outsourced. President Ramaphosa promised reform. Minister Ramakgopa promised pace. Operation Vulindlela promised delivery. What we got was reform by press release, PowerPoint reform, not power sector reform. Yes, load shedding has eased, but fewer blackouts do not mean a repaired electricity system. A patient out of ICU is not cured. Electricity remains too expensive, too fragile, too centralized, and too vulnerable to politics. Eskom standard tariffs rose by 8.76% for direct consumers in this financial year, and municipal tariffs by 9.01%. That follows a 12.7% increase last year. That means less electricity for the same prepaid voucher. A pensioner choosing between a heater and groceries. A spaza shop owner choosing between wages, rent, and the lights. Now compare that to negotiated pricing agreements. In April, Eskom announced a proposed 62 cents per kilowatt hour tariff for Samenkor Chrome and Glencore Marafe smelters. Make no mistake, we understand industrial distress. We understand jobs. But why must families absorb double-digit pain while special deals are negotiated behind commercial confidentiality? The mother buying 50 Rand of prepaid electricity gets no negotiated pricing agreement. The pensioner in a cold flat gets no reduced tariff. The township spaza owner gets no special dispensation. They get the bill. That is punishment pricing for consumers and sweetheart pricing for the connected. In March 2026, Eskom said municipal arrears had passed 110 billion Rand. In May, Johannesburg and City Power owed 5.2 billion Rand in arrears, excluding 1.5 billion in their current account. It is a governance sinkhole. And the causes aren't mysterious. Non-payment, illegal connections, meter tampering, ghost vending, cable theft, weak enforcement, political protection for theft dressed up as compassion. President Ramaphosa, you don't need another plan. You need the political will to confront the people who are profiting from failure. Ring-fence electricity revenue, install smart prepaid meters, prosecute those ghost vending syndicates, cut off the illegal connections, protect paying residents, stop rewarding municipalities that collect from citizens and fail to pay ESCOM. Now, distribution agency agreements may help in some places, but they're not a national solution. They're a band-aid on bullet holes. And then we come to ESCOM governance. ESCOM has confirmed an investigation into diesel procurement and storage contracts, but its interim report found failures in procurement and contract management. Amabungani reported that the matter involves 21 billion rand for a diesel contract for Ankelich, including alleged abnormal prepayments. This is why the DA has called for a joint meeting of the Electricity and Energy Committee and SCOPA. It cannot vanish into ESCOM's filing cabinets. Bring the board, bring National Treasury, bring the documents. Let's follow the money. Mr. President, we've seen this game before. Gupta's, Tegeta, Optimum. The same warning lights, but much bigger numbers this time. Diesel is meant to keep the lights on, but under ANC governance, even emergency fuel needs emergency investigation. That is why reform cannot crawl. The Electricity Regulation Act commenced on 1 January 2025, but laws do not produce power. We can't measure reform by announcements from the union buildings. We need to measure it by megawatts connected, kilometers of transmission lines built, debt reduced, and thieves prosecuted. The market operator must work. The national transmission company must be independent. Unbundling must be completed, not just performed. The DA argues for a truly independent electricity market operator. Referee, not player. Market, not monopoly. Competition, not cadre deployment. And above all, build the grid. The Transmission Development Plan requires 14,500 kilometers of new lines and 210 transformers by 2034. Without that, reform dies on the road. Wind in the Cape can't reach Gauteng. Solar projects back up. Investors walk away. Communities stay poor because the state cannot provide a plug point. Mr. President, this is the test. Not another committee, not another promise, not another fossil fuel dinosaur dragging its tail through the cabinet room. Execution. Liberalize the market, build the grid, clean up municipal revenue, end the secret deals, publish the diesel report, prosecute corruption, protect poor households, and let capable municipalities procure power. Let private capital build. Let South Africans procure electricity from real deliverers. South Africa is not short of plans, it's short of consequences. It needs affordable power, reliable power, competitive power. It needs a presidency that governs, not one that announces. A minister who executes, not explains delay. Municipalities that pay, thieves who go to jail, and citizens treated as the point of the electricity system, not as a mere afterthought. Thank you.
I now invite the Honourable Deputy Minister of Human Settlements.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Republic of South Africa, Honorable President Cyril Ramaphosa, allow me to stand on the protocols that are already established. Fellow South Africans, I rise today to speak in support of Budget Vote 1 of the Presidency with conviction, with purpose and with a deep sense of responsibility to the millions of South Africans whose lives are shaped by every rand allocated and every decision made from the union buildings. Today, we gather not just as representatives of our respective constituencies, but as stewards of a vision that has guided our nation for 3 decades. In this debate, we must reaffirm our commitment of this vision, which aims at improving the quality of life for all citizens and freeing the potential of everyone. This is not simply a financial debate. This is a debate about whether government is delivering on the promise made to our people, not just in words but in deeds. It is a debate about whether we are honoring the sacred compact that binds the states to its citizens. Honorable members, this year marks 30 years of our Constitution. That is not merely a document, but a living expression of our collective hope and dreams rooted in transformative aspirations of the Freedom Charter. Arguably, it is one of the most progressive, transformative founding documents in the world. Our Constitution was born out of the vision of the Freedom Charter, which solemnly declares that houses, security, and comfort shall be birthright of every South African, regardless of race, gender, or
Honourable
geography.
Deputy Minister, please take your seat. Honourable Reddy, please take your seat.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Will the Deputy Minister be prepared to take a question about
I will
tell
now
us how many
find
houses
now.
have been
Honourable
built?
Reddy, Honourable
You've given
Reddy.
us lots of
Honourable
stories.
Reddy.
How many houses have been
Honourable
built?
Reddy, I am now ruling you out of order. You know full well. You ask whether the member is willing to take a question. You do not give your question. Deputy Minister, are you prepared to take a question? No. No, she is not prepared. Please proceed.
Eddie, I'm waiting for you. Correctional.
The Constitution is our most powerful tool for change. It is an instrument designed to ensure that every person in our nation has access to adequate houses, security, and comfort. Budget Vote 1, the Presidency, commitment to lead. Budget Vote 1, the Presidency's commitment to lead a state that lives by its constitutional obligations, and we support it unreservedly. Honorable Deputy Speaker, a people cannot build their future without water, without shelter, and without access to opportunity. The Presidency has committed to advancing an integrated and sustainable human settlements policy, one that ensures universal access to basic services and economic inclusion. We stand firmly in support of this direction. Deputy Speaker, water is life, and for too many communities, that life remains uncertain. We therefore welcome the agency reflected in this budget, together with the Presidency's direct intervention and hands-on approach to strengthen ailing municipalities, restore failing infrastructure, and secure reliable access to water for all. Honorable members, investing in early childhood development is not optional spending, it is economic policy. As President Ramaphosa said in the 2026 State of the Nation address, that, I quote, "Our focus now is not establishing a firm foundation for learning in the early years of a child's life, for it is one of the most powerful levers. We have to unlock the potential of our nation," close quote. Quality early childhood programs increase school completion, employability, and long-term productivity. Similarly, NHI, despite ongoing contestations, functions are normative and the foundation of a state that affirms health equity for its most disadvantaged citizens. Although debated, anchors the principle that every citizen's health, especially the poorest, carries equal weight in a just health system. All these requires infrastructure, road sanitation, energy connectivity, to name but a few. We support this budget vote's commitment to building that foundation. Honorable Deputy Speaker, freedom finds its fullest expression in dignity. We therefore continue to invest in dignified housing, the upgrading of the informal settlements, and support for military veterans who help secure our democracy. Every home delivered, every title deed issued, and every settlement upgraded brings us closer to the constitutional promise of South Africa that belongs to all who live in it. Yet, the journey is not complete, and that the pace of delivery continues to accelerate. More needs to be done. Honorable members, the storms of KwaZulu-Natal, the floods that displaced the thousands in the Eastern Cape and Limpopo, the wildfires in the Western Cape, these are not distant threats. They present realities. Climate change does not discriminate, but it hits hardest those who have the least resources to recover. Through the emergency housing program, the government continues to provide temporary accommodation, relocation support, and restoration of damaged structures, going beyond emergency response to address the root of vulnerability. But our ambition must be greater still. Our responsibility is to build climate-resilient human settlements capable of withstanding future disasters and protecting the dignity of our people. Honorable President, this is precisely where innovative building technologies become not just relevant, but essential. The Department of Human Settlements is embracing faster, safer, and more sustainable methods of construction. The recent Presidential IBT Summit confirmed a watershed moment. These technologies are no longer experimental alternatives. They are necessary and permanent components of modern housing delivery. Our government is now institutionalizing IBTs within the mainstream human settlements program to accelerate delivery, strengthen disaster response capability, support localization, and critically, to create economic opportunities for women, youth, and emerging enterprises. This transformation and infrastructure development working as one. The proof of this concept is not theoretical, it is documented. In Limpopo, 2 IBT houses withstood severe disaster conditions that destroyed surrounding structures, standing firm while others fell, providing safety and protection to families sheltered within them. That is not a pilot project, that is proof of purpose, and this House should take note. Honorable President, we are encouraged by the tangible progress being made in KwaZulu-Natal under the stewardship of Mrs. Boniso Duma, following the commitment by all 3 spheres of government to provide permanent solutions for victims of the devastating 2022 floods. Progress is now being realized, not in promise, but in the keys handed over to qualifying beneficiaries. A few weeks ago, we witnessed the relocation of 113 households from transitional emergency accommodation into permanent homes in Konobia. These are families who endured years of hardship and uncertainty following the 2022 floods. Today, they have a place to call home. Plans are further underway to complete an additional 450 houses in Konobia by March 2027. We applaud this project and urge that momentum be maintained. To further reduce over-resilience on the private sector in disaster response, the department, through the Housing Development Agency, has acquired the Transnet-owned Montclair Lodge facility. Its refurbishment and operationalization will provide dignified emergency accommodation while strengthening the province's preparedness in the face of increasingly unpredictable weather patterns. This is the kind of proactive, state-led innovation this moment demands. As we commend KwaZulu-Natal's national response, we say clearly and without hesitation to the Western Cape Provincial Government, follow suit. Recent flood victims in the Western Cape deserve the same agency, the same commitment, and the same permanent shelter. The people of the Western Cape are not secondary class citizens and must not be treated as such. Honorable Deputy Speaker, land reform remains equally important. It needs ongoing political commitment and leadership. Recent interventions through the upgrading of land tenure program, land distribution and restoration program have extended ownership, security and opportunity to thousands of South Africans. Section 25 of the Constitution is mandatory directive for the state to redress past dispossessions and inequality, not just an idea. The executive committed is essential for meaningful land reform in South Africa, yet must recognize that the struggle for land ownership and economic justice is inseparable from the struggles for women emancipation. Thomas Sankara articulated this truth powerfully when he said, I quote, "The revolution and women's liberation go together. We do not talk of women's emancipation as an act of charity or out of search of human compassion. It is a necessity for the revolution to triumph. Women hold up the other half of the sky." Close quote. Honorable members, few days ago, the President launched the 3 land reforms programs directly in communities awaiting for justice. The Khaisigwe Communal Property Association, which has 4,996 beneficiaries, of whom 1,257 are women-headed households, received 12 title deeds covering 4,187 hectares, with over 20 million in post-settlement support, including 300 cattle and farming machineries. The Barolong Barapulana CPA received 3 title deeds covering 411 hectares as part of the process that has restored 26,066 hectares at a total settlement value of 312 million, with 40 million development programs underway. Honorable Speaker, every title deed handed to a woman-headed household, every parcel of land restored and transferred into the hands of a mother raising children advances not only social justice, but a broader transformation of the society. We support Budget Vote 1 because we believe in a South Africa where every child has clean water, every family has a roof with title deed attached, every city dismantled the geographic of exclusion, and every citizen from the Cape Flats to the hillsides of Limpopo can say, this government works for me. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Honourable members, I'm sure also that the Honourable Lonzi will be pleased to hear that business will now be suspended for 15 minutes for a comfort break. Bells will be rung 5 minutes before the resumption of business. Business is suspended.